Together we learn, together we grow, together we heal, together we flow. Be cool, every teacher, every school. 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 Be cool, every teacher, every school.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. So, welcome to the Cool Beans podcast, the podcast where we explore leadership opportunities for early career educators and how you can make an impact inside and outside the classroom. So, my name is Angelica McDonald, and I'm joined with my amazing co host, Dr. Marcella Weinsnyder and Mr. Todd Scholl. Hey,
Hey,
guys, how are you all doing tonight?
Hey, good afternoon. Pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good. I know it's, a Wednesday halfway through the school week, but, we're surviving and thriving this week.
Absolutely. Yes.
I'm doing
So
okay.
today,
I'm battling a cold, so if
oh
I
no,
if I mute myself to sneeze, I apologize. But that's what's going on. So other than that, I'm great.
that's good. But I hope that you do feel better because it seems like a lot of people are kind of, getting sick, or it's either the pollen. Every time I
Yeah.
wash my car, 5 minutes later, there's pollen all over again on my car. So it's like there's no point of me even washing my car.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
So, on tonight's podcast with Cool Beans, we're going to be talking about leadership opportunities, especially for, new teachers and maybe those who've been in the classroom for a while, but you just don't know how can you maybe, become a teacher leader. So, grab your coffee or your tea, whatever is going to fuel you, because I know it's, late in the evening. But again, welcome to the Cool Beans podcast. So, I know as a new teacher, leadership can mean a lot of different things, especially for new teachers trying to explore maybe the classroom, how to survive, but also thriving inside and outside the classroom. So the first question I wanted to ask for you guys, so what does teacher leadership maybe mean to you? And why is it important for an early career educator to maybe explore these opportunities?
I guess I'll take it first.
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
All right. So for me, I think teacher leadership actually begins with mindset. And so it's not just for principals, and it's certainly not just for veteran teachers. I think it begins, or it starts with how induction teachers or beginning teachers see themselves. And so as an induction teacher, I think what I would like for them to know is that they have the power to sort of shape their classroom culture. They have the power to influence colleagues. They have the power to, sort of set the stage for student success. So for me, teacher leadership is all about influence. So leadership is, or can be seen like a journey, but not a destination. And so it starts with small intentional steps. And so that's what teacher leadership means to me.
Yeah, I like that answer. And I love that you talked about mindset, because I do think leadership starts with an encounter within oneself. Because I think a lot of times people want to go and start leading, but haven't really sorted things out internally and figured out what their core values are, and haven't necessarily healed certain things that are inside themselves. And then Sean Ginwright talks about this in his book, The Four Pivots, which was given out at the NEA Leadership Summit. He talks about how a lot of times we go out and we want to lead and we want to help other people and fix the world, but we're doing it from a place of brokenness. So I think starting within oneself to sort through the things that you're going through and figuring out what it is you want to accomplish. I don't think you need to rush out and worry about signing up for every committee and all that. That's leadership can start within yourself and just in your own classroom. And then once you sort of get grounded and figure out what your values are and really are coming from that place of being healed, then you can go out and really make a difference. And there's a bunch of different ways to lead, and finding what works for you, amplifying your own strengths, and then building on those strengths and becoming a person that other folks can look to for a variety of things. Maybe it's for morale, or for your technical ability, or your ability to manage a classroom. There's a lot of different ways to lead, and then be a part of that collaborative environment in your school.
I love how you both started off with how you have to start with yourself first, because a lot of people, when they think of leadership, I think, especially for maybe young people or even older people too, they think leadership is always leading somebody, or you're always the face of something. But with me, and also kind of the way I've been raised, leadership is always, it is being a servant. So you're not always, the head boss. You are really serving other people. And you do that by first being a role model. So it always starts off, and Marcel, like how you said, it's small steps. So it first starts off with your classroom. So, and Todd, also like how you said, you have to join every committee your first year. One, you're trying to figure out your school climate, everything with the school. You're going to overwhelm yourself. But starting off with your classroom, how are you a leader to your students? Are you a good role model? Because a lot of new teachers, they start off like, I'm a friend with my student. No, you're not. You're still an adult in the classroom. So start off doing that, because that's what I know as an educator. That's what I did. I didn't try to do too much outside the classroom. My first year, I was like, let me survive and let me just be a good role model to my students. And after that, things and opportunities started opening, because your students will say something like, this teacher is doing this, and that kind of opens opportunities. And of course, your kids are talking to other teachers, and then, it kind of opens doors that way. And of course, there are other opportunities too that can open up. And maybe you do want to join something, but you don't have to be the face of something, because a lot of people think leadership, you're being the face, you're doing all the talking, but really it's starting with yourself, listening, and it's also being a servant as well. You're serving other people. You're not taking control, because again, that's going to be overwhelming. And you also need to fill yourself up. So Todd, I liked how you talked about how you have to be healed first, because you can't pour into something if you're empty yourself. And like my grandma would say, you can't love others if you don't even love yourself. So I think that's a very true statement.
Yeah.
So another question I did have, and I guess it kind of tied into what we just talked about, but what do you guys think are some common misconceptions about teacher leadership, especially those who don't want to really go to admin? Because I think that's a key thing with when you say leadership, most people automatically think admin. So I know when a few colleges came in, offering, degrees. And the first thing they kept asking, so do you want to get out the classroom? Do you want to get out the classroom? Do you want to be admin? That's the first question they're asking regarding leadership. But I don't believe leadership always has to be admin, but there's different opportunities. So for me, and there's a book I'm also reading, I wish I remember the name of it, but it's talking about different leadership roles that you can kind of take on. But of course, starting off with your classroom, but how can you kind of, bring your community inside your classroom? So starting off small in that way. That's being a leader. So maybe having someone speak in your classroom. Because I know next week I'm doing like a virtual field trip with the Poland Museum. And so they're going to show us the Auschwitz concentration camp is going to be live, but that's a leadership opportunity. So bringing something into the classroom. So that's another way you can, become a leader without thinking you have to be, an instructional coach or becoming a, not president, principal, sorry.
Yeah, I like that you differentiate between being a teacher leader versus what others may think about leadership as far as an admin is concerned. But, there are various ways that teachers can lead. They could lead in the classroom. They could lead with their colleagues in their school community. They could, lead beyond the classroom even. So when you're talking about leading in the classroom, I think like you mentioned, Angelica, that's your first leadership arena. For example, like the way teachers sort of manage their space, the way they engage students, how they communicate expectations, even how they reflect on leadership. Those are ways that they could lead in the classroom. And then within their school community or even with their colleagues, I think that it really doesn't stop at your classroom door. So I believe induction teachers have the opportunities to sort of grow their leadership by collaborating with their colleagues. I remember my first leadership foray into education began with just my cooperating teacher. So as a student teacher, as someone who, was practicing in the clinical field. As a student teacher, my cooperating teacher gave me opportunities to lead. And she realized early on, like, it wasn't just a one-way street. It was sort of like a two-way, mentorship, leadership model where she gained valuable insights from me as well as I from her. And she consistently gave me opportunities to be upfront, to lead, to showcase my talents and my abilities. And so just making sure that we provide those opportunities for our young teachers to be leaders. That's very important.
Yeah, those are some great thoughts. I was thinking about the great leaders that I've been around, and one of the common things that they have, one of the things they have in common is their willingness to have. They have the courage to be vulnerable, and I think sometimes leaders who are not really skillful at leading often feel like they have to have all of the answers and that they can't invite input and that they're not comfortable with healthy conflict, and then and they can't show any kind of vulnerability because they see that as a weakness. But to me, the best leaders, and every teacher can do this, is admit this is where I'm struggling and this is where I need help. This is something that is not a great skill of mine, but it's something I'd like to develop. I think just having that curious mindset and that capacity to say, here's what I'm struggling with, but I want to get better. Like that goes back to Marcella's comment about mindset. And it really is just having a self-awareness of where you have strengths and where you might have weaknesses. And then also just inviting like a healthy sense of conflict and a healthy sense of, we don't all have to agree on things, but we can talk about it and have an open mind, and I can learn from you and you can learn from me. That to me creates the kind of cultures that are healthy at schools, rather than typical top-down structures that say, this is the way it is, this is how it's going to be, this is the policy, don't question it, just do what you're told. That is a recipe for creating a lot of misery in a school culture. So, and even in your classroom. So I think having like community agreements, talking about what your shared values are, so that you can anchor back to what those values are when there are disagreements. But vulnerability is a huge one. And I think a lot of times we see that as the opposite of leadership, but it's actually a critical component.
Yeah, and I also would add to that, like, imposter syndrome. So a lot of times, a lot of new teachers, they struggle with what we call imposter syndrome, and because they doubt their leadership potential, because they are just starting off in the profession. But, we want to make sure that they're stepping confidently into leadership roles by encouraging them. So
Mm.
just overcoming those challenges and what we deem as imposter syndrome is key as well.
Yeah. I'm glad how you both talked about, of course, the imposter syndrome and of course being vulnerable. Because I think as when people think of leadership, um, you have to be perfect, you have to know it all,
Mm.
and that's impossible. But a key
Right.
skill with being a teacher leader, or being a leader, you're a lifelong learner. You're constantly growing, you're constantly learning. And the way you do that, like my mom or my dad would say, like the person you want to be, you should really like learn under that person. And of course, you're not trying to imitate them because you're your own person, but what skills can you learn from that person? So having a mentor is very important, because I know I'm definitely the teacher I am today. I would not be the teacher I am today if it wasn't for my mentor at my school, because she was always there asking questions, and she's still my mentor. Because a lot of people think after your first year, your mentor is gone. But I'm really thankful for my mentor, Miss Rivers Davis, because she has really, anytime I had a question, even now, she's always willing to listen to me. She's always given me good encouragement and things what I have like outside of the classroom. And she's also very encouraging. So every time I'm like thinking about maybe I should do this or not do this, she's very encouraging, and also is willing to let me make my own mistakes too. Like she's
Mm.
done it her way, but she's like, you are your own person.
Right.
You can see like how it's going to work for you. So it's okay to make mistakes as a teacher, because I think a lot of teachers, we have that idea that we have to be perfect, especially in the classroom. Like we can't make mistakes, but of course you're going to. But the key thing is not, and I'm still learning this myself, not to wallow in it,
Right.
but to grow through it. So my grandma would say, "No, don't go, you're not going through it, you're growing through it." Because whatever challenge that comes with it as a leader, you have to grow through it. Because if not, you're going to keep taking that test over and over until you get it right. So your test might be different from someone else's. So maybe it might be perfectionism, or maybe it's, going through conflict. Because as a leader, you're going to have to go through conflict. And I know I've gone through a few conflicts this last few years, but it forced me to use my teacher voice because I'm more of a quiet person. But it really forced me to put my foot down and to speak up. And a lot of people were very impressed by that. Like, even though I'm not a person I like confrontation at all, but when I finally, put my foot down, made my demands known, people were impressed and actually listened. So just being a fifth year teacher, people were actually listening to me. And you actually be surprised of how many people, no matter how young you are, or when you start in education, people actually see what you're doing, whether you think so or not. The way you're walking in the classroom, what you're saying or not saying, people are actually watching you. And I liked how one of you guys talked about school climate. So you can kind of change the climate with your, of course, there's a lot of things wrong in, education, but sometimes you have to be that optimistic person, because if not, you're not going to really enjoy your time in education. But you have to find, some good things. And you never know who's actually watching, whether it's students or other teachers, and they can be very impressed with what's happening.
Yeah.
Another question I did have, and it kind of ties in, I think we touched on it a little bit, but what skills do you think are essential for new teachers who want to be an effective teacher leader? So what are some skills we probably need to hone in order to become a teacher leader?
I think one skill is just to be an effective listener.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can lead anybody without a relationship. I think you can only manage people, and we have a lot of people who are conflating management with leadership. And you see this in administration. You see this even in the classroom. People can manage students, but they don't lead students because they haven't spent the time developing, cultivating a relationship. This also happens in organizations. So without that trust, without that relationship, and then you want to go in and just tell people, here's what I know, here's what I know, here's what you need to know, here's what we're doing, here's what you're going to do, here's what you're going to do, here's what you're going to do. And there's no relationship there. All that is management. It's cold management, and it doesn't inspire people, and it's not leadership. So if you don't take the time on the front end to invest in the relationship, that's the best you can do is manage.
Right. And I'm a proponent of distributed or shared leadership because, like I mentioned before, I have a lot to learn from those I lead and vice versa. And so, as a leader, I would often make sure that I granted others, under my purview, the opportunity to lead, because we all have the opportunity to lead from others and grow. That's how we grow. So it wasn't always a top-down approach. It was like, we're all going to take, part of this. We're going to have buy-in to everything that we're doing. We're going to set the course, and we're going to move together as one team. And I think that's really essential in leadership.
And I think another thing, and I think I talked about, well, I did say something about, like, being a lifelong learner, so like learning from those mistakes. And a thing I like to do, I learn from other people's mistakes too. So I may not make the mistake, but I watch other people. I may not say anything, but I'm just like watching of how other people may do things. And I know I have a different personality. And so I was like, maybe they did that, but I'm going to try something different. And also being willing to try new things, because what works with kind of like in your classroom. So that's why I think, the class, being a leader in your classroom is so important, because if you do somehow start leading outside the classroom, everything's almost similar. So, like differentiation, when you're with a group of, different types of adults, you're going to have to learn how to differentiate a little bit. Like, how do you talk to one person might be a little different depending on their personalities. And also, and Marcel, like how you said, you have to listen to other people. So even if you don't agree, you still have to learn how to listen to other people, because you can actually learn from people. Even if you don't like someone, you can learn from, I'm a person, I learn from anybody. I don't have to really, be your best buddy, but I can learn from anybody. And you have to be willing to, learn and listen to other people, and also not be afraid to kind of stand up for yourself as well. Because again, you do want to listen to other perspectives, but sometimes things have to be done. And and I know as a young teacher, it can be, kind of scary, like standing up for yourself or saying something. So like if you're in a room and you have a good idea, don't be afraid to, say something. You never know. Maybe it might be used. And if it's not, it's okay. So if something you say gets shut down, don't be afraid to say something else the next time. So don't think just because something doesn't happen your way that I can never do this, be afraid and completely shut down. It's just a learning opportunity for you to try something else or try something new. So I think those are maybe some other important things. Anything else, another skill maybe for new teachers?
Yeah, one thing is try to look at and I'm stealing from, I want to credit Sean Ginwright for saying it this way. Try to look at your leadership as an opportunity to transform instead of being transactional.
Mhm.
I think we get into a habit of things being very transactional, like I'm going to give you this, you're going to give me that, and that doesn't cultivate the relationship. What can cultivate the relationship is really investing in people and getting to know them, not just in the work that you're doing. So like in the classroom, the way this looks is, not just going over the agenda and the curriculum and worried about the pacing guide, but actually asking a student, what are their interests? What kind of music do you like? That kind of thing. With your colleagues, it's also, how's your family doing? Tell me more about your kids.
Mhm.
Those kind of investments are really important. And I think some people in their like their intention is to get a lot of things done and to achieve their goals. They forget that if I don't invest in that part, if we don't build that relationship, we're not really, I mean, it's going to be kind of like an empty process of building these goals together. And we might get there, but like, what did we actually build? Um, and is it sustainable? Are we really building a sustainable culture that where people feel valued and heard and seen and that they belong here? So that kind of culture building, it takes time and it takes intention and it takes effort. And unfortunately, a lot of leaders aren't willing to do that, and teachers aren't. And when they don't build that rapport, that's when you start struggling with. To me, you're more likely to have struggles with classroom management, and you're also going to feel disconnected from the people in your building.
Yeah, and Todd, I love that because that's actually a trend that I've been seeing lately, with groups meeting, like they're checking in first. Let's check in. How are you doing? Before moving on to anything, professional within that realm. Like, what's going on with you? How do you feel today? What issues, what challenges can we help you solve? And I do love that
Yeah.
because you're checking in with the person first before moving on to the other things.
Right. Right.
Because I think sometimes we kind of forget that everyone is, a person. You never know what they're going through. And I think my assistant principal at my school does a really good job. Like before any meeting, or if we have to do something with data or anything, he's always checking in. And he was very sweet and very, very good, especially when my grandmother passed. Like he treated like he wasn't focused on like the pacing, all of this. He was like, "Are
Yeah.
you okay? How are you feeling?" So he always treated us like, human beings with, with feelings.
Yeah.
And I think it also ties back something I said earlier, like you're basically a servant, but people think servitude is a bad thing. No,
Mhm.
but you're, helping other people. So leadership is not you being on the top and everyone on the bottom. You're all
Right.
working together and you're serving each other. And I like Todd, what you said. It's not really, you said it's not transactional. It was what again?
Transformational.
Informational.
Transformational. I love that.
Yep. Mhm. Yeah. Well, that's Sean. I wanna make sure that I'm
Oh,
giving
thank you,
credit
Sean.
to Sean Ginwright, yes. But yeah, that's where I heard that. And that book, The Four Pivots, is really powerful. He talks about the importance of doing that mirror work first, that work on ourselves, and then shifting and seeing the power of relationships. Um, and then also he talks about hustle to flow a lot, which is
Mhm.
I think a lot of times, especially in our schools, we're all so busy hustling and we don't get into that state of flow. And this just constant sense of we're striving and achieving, and there's really no time for you to be a human being or for us to cultivate those relationships. I think that's problematic systematically across, like not just in South Carolina, but really across the country in our school systems, where we're set up to really chase these test scores, and then we
Mhm.
end up inadvertently kind of setting aside all those things that human beings actually need to flourish, and then the test scores are going to plummet as a result because you're not taking care of the Maslow, the human needs that we have. So it's like you just can't bypass it. You can't bypass the human needs and expect to have good outcomes in schools. You just can't. So
Definitely. And I'm glad you went back over the hierarchy too. We think about it for students. We also have to think it for everyone else. We all need this.
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know we're getting close to the end of our time, but I did want to make this one, pivot. Of course, when you're thinking about leadership, you're also thinking about organizations you can be a part of. Of course, the SCEA has great leadership opportunities and also professional developments and everything that you can be a part of. So you don't have to wait to your, in your fifth year, even your first year, there's many opportunities. So I know in my second year, I joined the SEA and it's opened so many doors for me. So for those who haven't joined the SEA or you're thinking about it, there's many opportunities and you, again, collaborating with others and also a lot of professional development that can help hone in those leadership skills.
Absolutely.
Yeah. NEAs, I'm going to put this website up here for those. I'm going to put it in the chat as well. NEA has partnered, I think, with Center of Teaching for Teaching Quality. They developed these leadership competencies, and I think this is really a helpful tool for people who want to really kind of have kind of like a rubric, I guess, like to sort of look at their leadership competency framework. And what I love about NEA's framework is that they have social emotional intelligence at the center, and then around that center you have things like advocacy, communication, governance and organizing and stuff like that. So but at the core is this social emotional intelligence, which is kind of what we've been saying here, which is really knowing yourself and taking care of yourself, and then from there figuring out where do I need to develop as a leader. So I just want to encourage people to just check out the resources that NEA provides, because they have a wonderful leadership development program.
Definitely. Anything else anyone would like to add, or is there any announcements regarding the SEA that is coming up?
Well, before we close, I just want to remind induction teachers that, as they begin to think about transitioning into leadership early in their careers, there are basically three ways that they can do it. They could do it like in the classroom, they could do it with colleagues in their school community, and they could do it beyond the classroom. But in the classroom, they can think of like setting the tone for a positive classroom culture, modeling professionalism, being innovative in teaching, encouraging their students to even be leaders, and then, being that reflective practitioner that we talk about so often. And with their colleagues in the school community, think about leadership as far as like seeking a mentor, but also being a mentor. As well. We talked about engaging in professional learning, becoming a part of a PLC, taking the initiative in meetings. Like I mentioned, how my cooperating teacher would always provide those opportunities for me to lead. So to do the same, joining school communities, even leading a professional development session, especially if you're sort of gifted or in like technology or anything else, take those opportunities to lead. And then also finally, beyond the classroom, I'm thinking of like how they can connect with families in the community by, like Todd mentioned, fostering those relationships, engaging parents, attending school events, advocating for student needs. I think that was one of my first also opportunities to be a teacher leader, is advocating for the needs of my students. Um, and then, pursuing additional training, certifications, all of those are opportunities to lead beyond the classroom. So just want to remind, induction teachers or early career educators, there are so many different ways to be a teacher leader, or ways that they can transition into that leadership role.
And the SCEA needs leaders. So if you are, it doesn't matter where you are in your career, you have a local that meets probably in your area. So whether you're in Greenville or Charleston, we have the local associations. When you join the SCEA, you're joining the National Education Association, the SCEA, and then your local, and you can get involved in your local. And some of our locals really do need leaders. So if you're wanting to step up and be more active as an education advocate, join the SCEA, talk with your UniServe directors. We have 3 UniServe directors across the state: Melody Bollinger in the upstate, we have Brandy Sturdivant in the Midlands, and we have Alana Ward in the Low Country. You can reach out to them. You can find them on our website. Reach out to them. They can help plug you in and start your leadership journey as an advocate, because we absolutely need to be advocating at the local level, at your school board meetings, at the state level, and then at the national level. And only the SCEA provides all 3 of those opportunities. I did want to share just a couple of things. And Marcel, you can jump in here and talk about your cool coaching program.
Yes, so every Tuesday and Thursday evening from 6 to 8, Angie Brush, Stephanie Johnson, and I, we are available to induction teachers or veteran teachers. If you have things that we could help you with, we would love to assist you from anything from lesson planning to even just listening to you vent about a certain situation at school, to helping you find resources, to walking you through lesson plans. We are available. So Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6 to 8, we love helping our induction teachers and other early career educators when we can.
And next week on Wednesday, I'll be interviewing Taylor Simon. She has a TikTok channel called Liberation is Lit, and she's done some really great education advocacy. That's going to be next Wednesday from 6 to 7 o'clock. And we do have a few spaces left in our educator wellness retreat. So we talked about healing yourself. We talked about taking good care of yourself. If you'd like to join us, these retreats, we have, I think, 2 spaces open in June, and I think one just opened up in July. And just go to cool.us/retreat. It's $150 for members of the SCEA, $250 for folks who are not members. This is only for public school educators in the state of South Carolina. And the last thing that I want to make sure we mention, because this is relatively new, and this isn't necessarily for induction teachers because you've already made it through the praxis, but for those who might be watching who are aspiring educators, Marcella, do you want to tell them a little bit about this resource?
Yes, and so NEA, the SCEA and study.com has partnered up to provide that essential support for any educator who has to pass the praxis or who are preparing for a praxis exam. And it's just not praxis core. If you're preparing for the PLT or praxis content area, this is for you. So please reach out. If you go to cool.us/praxis, you can find the information. It's free for any member of the SCEA. If you are an aspiring member or, a veteran educator, anyone who needs to pass the praxis, we have those support services for you. And we also have sort of like a landing page, at that site as well that explains information about the praxis. So resources are available. We hope that you take advantage of it. Please share it with others who are members of the SCEA, and we look forward to supporting those folks.
Definitely. Thank you, guys. And guys, please take advantage of those opportunities. There's a lot of resources that are there, are there to help you. So thank you all for joining us tonight to our Cool Beans, podcast season 2. So thank you guys again for always, bringing, wisdom and a lot of enthusiasm regarding these topics. So the key thing with teacher leadership, again, don't be afraid. It may, feel a little frightening, but what I'm learning now, sometimes you just have to do it afraid, even if you're, feel very nervous. I like to psych myself out and say, I'm excited, even if I'm not excited at the moment. But sometimes you just have to take that initiative and you never know where your path may lead. So a lot of things and opportunities I have now, especially in leadership, is because I just took that initiative and you never know where that's going to lead. So again, thank you guys for joining us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please don't forget to, subscribe. And of course, please share this episode and other episodes with other, educators as well. But we hope you all have a good night. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Together we learn, together we grow, together we heal, together we flow. Be cool, every teacher, every school. Be cool, every teacher, every school. Be cool, every teacher, every school.